One of the biggest reasons why I wanted to create this channel is because I wanted to talk about things in fishing that honestly aren't that sexy. They're things that don't tend to get a lot of views out there on YouTube. They don't really have broad appeal. And with that being said, most of these things are extremely important for the angler to know and for an angler to learn. And today is one of those subjects. I want to talk about treble hooks. And although every single lure out there, hard plastic, typically has treble hooks on it, it's something, like I said, that's not that sexy. Not a lot of guys put a lot of effort into. And today I want to talk about why I think treble hooks are one of the most important, if not the most important aspect of your lure. So let's dive on in. Real quick before I get into the video, guys, as always, it's brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. For this month and this month only, I'm running a sale. If you buy one sun shirt, which is a sun shirt made in the US, you can get the second one for 50% off. I'm gonna leave a link down below in the description, and it would greatly help support the channel. All right, let's get into treble hooks. Now, the first thing that you should know is that no matter if you buy a $6 crankbait or a $250 glide bait like I'm holding right here, most of the treble hooks that you have on your baits are junk. If you get them right out of the package, the stock treble hooks on probably about 90% of the baits that are out there are just not what I would consider to be high quality treble hooks or ones that last a long time. This is something that I see a lot in specific lure brands. Is you'll have treble hooks that are really sticky sharp, but they don't last. You'll catch 3-4 fish on them. You'll feel that bait, that hook, and they're literally like, they're completely rounded over, they're dull, they're no good anymore. So one of the biggest things that I tell almost every angler, especially if you're just getting into fishing, is that if you want to like take your fishing to the next level, I would suggest switching out pretty much every treble hook that you use on your baits. And I think that this is really, really important, especially if you want to get into tournament fishing where money is on the line. But even if you don't want to get into tournament fishing, if you're using a bait like a glide bait here, I mean, you want to land that 10, 11, 12 pound fish that hits that bait, and having the right treble hooks on there can really help increase your chances at landing that fish. So let's talk about one quick thing before I want to talk real specifically in this video about round bend treble hooks versus the EWG style treble hooks. But the big thing that you should know before you change out any treble hook is that you should actually weigh the treble hooks that are on the bait, the stock treble hooks. You should weigh them with like a really, like a kitchen scale, something that can measure like in grams, because the thing about a lot of the lures that are out there on the market is a lot of them are made taking into consideration the hooks that are on them. For example, a Mega Bass 110. You know, it has those really unique hooks on them, and those hooks are pretty thin wired hooks, and I change them out all the time because I don't like those hooks. There's a lot of guys that do like those hooks, and they are very sticky sharp, but they bend out fairly easily. And it's really important to know that if you don't put hooks on there that are pretty much the same in weight, it's really gonna make that bait do different things. For example, it might make that bait sink, it might make that bait rise. So sometimes it's not going to matter with certain lures. Sometimes it doesn't matter because, you know, like for example, a really deep diving crankbait that has a lot of drag on it, the weight of the hooks, if it's slightly off, it's not gonna drastically change the way that bait works. But for some baits, it will, especially baits that are a little bit smaller. So something that I like to do when I change out hooks is just weigh the stock hooks to make sure that I'm going to replace them with hooks that are somewhat of the exact same weight. That way I know that bait is going to work in the exact same manner that it was designed to. Okay, now let's talk about round bend versus EWG. And this is probably a really big debate when it comes to fishing. And I think that it always used to be round bend. Then there was a season, especially when like Kevin Van Dam was winning every single tournament with a crankbait, he emphasized using a EWG hook on those baits. And I think for a lot of us, myself included, I used the EWG style hook for years and years and years. And guess what? I had pretty good success with an EWG hook. But over the course of just using it more and more, there was just a couple of times that I would be out there fishing and I would actually have trouble, I would have trouble hooking up with some fish. And it was usually on baits that are like slash baits, baits like jerk baits or top waters, baits that bass come up and kind of slap at. And I switched over to more round bend style hooks on those baits, and I really kind of immediately stopped having those bites where a fish would absolutely kill a topwater and miss it, or they'd hit that jerk bait so hard and you wouldn't hook up with them. So personally, I like the round bends on those hooks. And for the most part these days, I like round bend hooks, because I think what you have in today's age is you have more and more fish that have seen a lot more lures. And you have fish out there that they will stop at kind of the last moment. They will see something that they don't necessarily love and they'll turn away from it. And sometimes having those round bends that kind of stick out a little bit further will catch that fish before he turns. Okay, now this is only happening on a very minute scale. So let me put that in perspective. This might only change the outcome of your total fish catches by a few percentage points, if you will. But to me, as a tournament angler, it's important that I'm doing everything that I can to basically put fish in the boat. And so that's why I've really gone with round bends. Now, there have been situations where I have been on a very strong bite where the fish are just plastering these baits. For example, I was at Oneida fishing a topwater a couple of years ago. I was using round bends, and the smallmouth were killing a topwater, and every one of them had that sucker sideways in its mouth. Like, they were eating the bait so well. And in that case, I actually decided to go to the EWG style, because typically, if you hook a fish with EWGs, you do get them in. Like, I feel like that is a big con of an EWG, is it helps you to get that fish in the boat just the way that they are designed. So in that case, I did take off round bends and I put EWGs on, and I felt like I didn't lose any fish, especially those smallmouth that would just come up, jump in, and going all crazy. So there are certain situations like that. If you feel that the fish are hitting baits very, very well, if they're engulfing them, if they're really eating them, we're switching to the EWG. EWG actually might be a little bit better. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, now I want to talk about one of the last things here, and that is actually not completely about your treble hook and more about the split ring that is attached to your treble hook. And guys, I want to let you know that I haven't lost many fish due to split rings coming off. But every time that I have, it's been in a very important time. I lost a fish in a Bassmaster Open on Lake Hartwell just a couple of years ago, where my split ring broke on the bait. And that one fish cost me over $3,000. It was the difference in me getting a check in that tournament and not. And there was another very similar situation that happened in another really big event years ago. So one thing that I want to suggest is that, you know, I always switch out my treble hooks on my baits, but if I go a year and I'm catching a lot of fish on a particular bait, I really start to pay attention to those split rings, and I will make sure that I also put new split rings on there, because they just get weak over time. Like, they just do, especially if you're going out there and you're catching a lot of fish on a bait. Now, the other thing with split rings is that something that's really good to do is actually make braided line split rings, where you actually make a little split ring that's literally the size of a split ring, but with a braided line. You can do this with like 30-pound braid or 40-pound braid. And something that is really good about those braided line split rings is they allow that treble hook to have 100% spin on them. They can completely spin around. Now, a bait like I'm holding here, this is the bait that I talked about earlier, that's $250. It's a clutch swim bait. This one actually, it's designed, this, I don't even know how they do it. This little pin up here actually rotates 306, like it just continues to rotate on it. So that's something that's really, really nice about this bait. But yet, I still switched out the treble hooks. Now, a lot of you may ask, okay, Tyler, that all sounds great. What are the treble hooks that you like? And to be honest, there's a lot of good ones out there on the market. I am particularly partial to two main treble hooks. One is the Berkley Fusion 19 hooks. They are a very strong hook that I have seen to last a long, long time. Like, not only are they sharp, but you can catch a number of fish on them, and you can feel those baits, and they are very sticky sharp for a long time. They also do not bend out very well. They are a little bit of a brittle hook. So, and what I mean by brittle is that they will break on you before they bend out, if that makes sense. Like, they're a very strong hook, but they will break. And I have had a few break. Usually it's when I'm getting a fish unhooked with like a pair of pliers. So that's a really good hook that I like. Owner also makes a hook, and I can't remember the name of it right now. Shoot, I should have known that. I'll leave a link down below in the description. Owner makes another good hook that I really, really like, that I use, that are round bends. They're a short shank round bend hook, and that's what I use a lot. Gamakatsu makes really good hooks as well. Like, a lot of those major hook manufacturers make good hooks. I will link the ones that I like down below. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something about treble hooks, this very non-sexy thing. And if you guys liked the video, subscribe, and I will see you guys tomorrow.